Welcome to The Spotlight, the podcast where veterans and military spouses connect and share how their military experience has transformed their lives and their businesses. Here's your host, Bob Louthen.
Hey, this is your host, Bob Louthen, founder of the VeteranCrowd Network, the network that brings veterans and veteran-led businesses together with each other and the resources they need to prosper. And you are tuning into The Spotlight. Hey everybody, it's Bob Louthen, host of the Spotlight on the VeteranCrowd Network. Very pleased to have a guest, a new friend, Jarrod Smith. He lives in Northern Virginia. He's in the United States Navy, but doing some great things with the Liberty Accelerator Program. Jarrod, thanks for stepping into the Spotlight. Welcome to the program.
Great to be here, Bob. Thanks so much for having me.
So you're currently stationed, I guess, at the Pentagon and continuing to serve in the United States Navy, but we're going to talk today about transition, aren't we?
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit, when did you start the Liberty Accelerator Program? What's this all about?
So it's been a bit of a journey. In August of 2018, I was notified that my record had been selected for promotion to the 05 pay grade or commander in the Naval Forces. And it wasn't until that point where I finally woke up to the fact that I too would leave service one day. And I had a couple of unique collateral duty assignments in the previous 5 years or so where I filled the role of a transition assistance program officer at a command I was at. And while there, I was also a casualty assistance calls officer and had to participate in one family event that needed the services of the CACO. During those experiences, it never really occurred to me that yes, I too would leave one day and I should be planning for that at that point. But come a few years down the road into August of 18 and getting promoted to commander rank, something just clicked. And I was like, what am I doing? So the journey over the last 3 years has taken me to really a year ago is where this Liberty Accelerator Program idea really started. And the social media 22 push-up per day challenge that I come across on Facebook prompted me to act. Not only did I do push-ups, I asked myself a 5-worded question that changed the trajectory of my transition and my life as well. And that question was, are we doing transition right? And immediately I was like, no, we got it all backwards. So me with an operational planning background and a supply corps guy and a loggy, I was like, why don't we apply our mission readiness ideas we use for our weapons platforms to the military family as it pertains to what Herb Thompson coined the transition mission. And out of that, there's a whole lot more has come, but it has developed into the Liberty Accelerator Program for intentional, informed military family readiness planning from the earliest days in service in preparation for that inevitable last day on active duty. So that's kind of a history on it.
We're going to drill down on that. So I got to ask the acronym you mentioned, CACO. Did you literally have to show up at somebody's front doorstep and deliver the news that a family member had died in service of this country?
I did show up there with a team. I was not the lead on that visit, but I was the assistant CACO, casualty assistance calls officer. And yes, it was a tough experience.
Tough experience. Yeah. Particularly in close proximity to this being Memorial Day weekend, it just kind of brings all of this home, doesn't it?
It does.
It does. So we're going to talk about this, drill down on the TAP program and some other things, but you use the term military family readiness. What does that mean?
So in the services, DOD has family readiness centers on the base, and it alludes to the military family being ready for the service member's deployment, or perhaps that service member not to come home, right? And my journey over the past year or so has evolved into whether or not the service member does or doesn't come home, the military family is going to get off of active duty someday. We should be ready for that at any moment, not planning for getting out of service in 5 years or 35 years. But it's a mindset shift with respect to how we look at military family readiness from a whole health perspective and full use of the medical system to ensure that we're operating at full capacity. From, for the service member anyways, that identity of self and who they are beneath the rank, out of the tank, plane, or ship, and beyond their service branch, right? Who they really truly are at their core. Because many of us identify with our rank or weapons systems, such as a submarine or an aviator in airplanes. And there's more to it. And that's a critical piece during the transition experience that I feel like a whole lot of people are missing, because they're having to just search for a job. So I've covered two though so far: the health angle and the self angle concerning readiness. And then there's a third, which I refer to as the wealth picture, and being financially prepared to embrace what I call that Liberty Day on that last day of active duty. And if you're concerned about your money situation, it's a catalyst to a whole lot of other challenges. And we can't be planning for this good money situation, 2 years or 12 months out from transition. If you're waiting until then to think about it, you're way too late.
So let's really tear this thing apart. And let's start with the TAP program, right? So
Okay.
you get the Transition Assistance Program. I guess that's what it stands for.
DOD is
and
Transition Assistance Program. That's correct.
you say that that's about jobs. So let's just tear that program apart. They did some modifications to it in the last 24 months, revamped the TAP program. And we still, kind of get marginal review from people. Why is that?
So before I go to criticizing the DOD programs, I will caveat with anything and everything I say here are my own personal opinions and don't reflect the views of the U.S. government, the DOD, or the United States Navy. Right?
It goes
These
with
are
me
all my
too. It
personal
goes
views.
with me too. I mean, I think I told you the story about how I'd heard about the update to the TAP program in a setting, sort of a business and government sector group that I belong to, and
Yes.
I asked the question how much input they got from the private sector, and the answer was that they hadn't. And I just think that talking to the customer who's going to hire the the transitioning veteran might be a
Right.
novel concept.
It might. It might. So that's no surprise to me because I've been doing this almost 2 decades. Right. And it's unfortunate that DoD TAP seems to be monopolized by the job hunt and resume preparation and skill development in order to get a job. They do touch on Veterans Affairs aspects with respect to the Veterans Affairs services that are available. But I don't necessarily believe that they do a good enough job with respect to preparing us for the VA
It's
disability
not the
compensation
holistic
exam.
approach.
It is not. It's a very narrow approach with respect to maintaining a standard of living. I believe that to achieve true liberty, freedom, and autonomy, there's much more to it. And planning for it starts much, much sooner in service. Again, tying it back to that military family readiness
I love your
that I believe every
statement.
family needs.
It's not only about jobs, it's health, self, wealth, and relationships, right?
All three of those pillars reside on a strong, sturdy foundation of relationships. Those relationships must be developed over the course of our entire career, not just at the end, networking, trying to find a job. That's a bad plan. It's funny because I was mentoring an ensign coming through one of the training pipelines over the course of the last 18 months or so. And early on, I said, hey, send me a list of questions you've got just respect to military service overall. And he sent me a list of 10 questions. And those 10 questions actually turned into my OpRep series newsletter. And I think the second or third question he asked me was, what's the importance of maintaining relationships as I progress through my military career? And it was just such a wow, this junior officer is asking me this very important question that I wish I would have had an answer to 15 years ago, because had I made a more meaningful approach at developing and nurturing the relationships with everyone that I worked with on the ships and ashore over the past 15 years, um, I might be able to provide what value I think I have to them. But because, the relationships were pretty shallow, specifically work and mission, little m mission focused specifically, we kind of parted ways and haven't stayed in touch. A few people I have, but not nearly as many as I could have. So Liberty Accelerator is an effort to also rekindle some of those, old relationships I didn't build, and perhaps provide those military families with the warning about transition, and that it's not a 2-year or 12-month thing. It's a military family readiness thing from the earliest days in service, so that they can equip themselves for their inevitable departure. And more importantly, they can build relationships with other military families and prompt them to begin intentional, informed planning, whether or not their transition hits them out of the blue because of a forced drawdown, or whether they reach 35 years of service as a 4-star general or admiral, and then they're ready then too, right? There's no loss in doing it this way.
You got to dig the well before you're thirsty. And I think,
Right.
boy, every time you say something, you open up this whole series of new thoughts here. One is that, when your network in the military is all military, well, you need a private sector network, right? And so you need to be developing that. We got these great tools now that we didn't have when we were younger, like LinkedIn, right?
Right.
But I tell young people all the time, man, you need to be building that network. Your net worth is your network, right? And having those private sector connections is very important. Secondly, most military people, when they transition, don't go back home. They go live somewhere outside of their home. So even those high school buddies and family relationships, in the old hometown, while they're important, need to be augmented, with a real professional network. Very important
Absolutely.
stuff.
And now a word about a VeteranCrowd Spotlight sponsor. The Severn River Leadership Group is a veteran-owned small business committed to the development and success of military veterans, first responders, elite athletes, and our community. We invest in each with our time, talent, and treasure through small business investing, coaching, and consulting. Leadership can be a very lonely place because of all of the responsibility and accountability involved and the decisions that need to be made. In today's world, small business owners and entrepreneurs need a trusted advisor in their corner to have real conversations about real life and business stuff. That's what the Severn River Leadership Group provides: personal leadership and team coaching for small business owners and entrepreneurs focused on emotional intelligence, personal and team resilience, decision-making, and team effectiveness. If you are a veteran, first responder, or elite athlete small business owner looking for a trusted advisor to help you get to the next level, connect with us online at www.severnriverleadershipgroup.com.
Hey, we've been talking with Jarrod H. Smith, who is the founder of the Liberty Accelerator Program. I want to dive into the wealth issue at this point, and kind of the health issue. You and I have a mutual friend in Scott R. Tucker, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he's a big wealth guru for veterans and so forth. But I think health and wealth are tied together. If you've got money problems, you're going to have health problems, right?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you bring that up, because in the 3-pillar model I built with that sturdy foundation of relationships, those 3 pillars are kind of like oak tree trunks, and they've got roots growing down into that relationship base, right? And those health roots are absolutely connected and entangled with those wealth roots. Our wealth is inherent to us. The knowledge, skills, and imagination and abilities that we bring to solve problems for others. Through that, we can get paid handsomely for doing so, right? And if you're not healthy, if you don't have a sound mental state, good physical condition, some sort of moral and or spiritual aspect to your life, it can be harder, right? So the health picture is so critically important. Not only that, those of us on active duty, every single one of us will go through a VA disability compensation exam. That's directly tied to your medical record. And waiting to try to manage and figure out that medical record at 2 years or less out from separation or retirement is a terrible plan, because the medical record system is complicated. And I'm living this right now, so I can speak to it. I mean, not only does your general medical record get stored in a database that's accessible from any location, a mental health record that you might have isn't managed the same way. Any mental health treatments you've had throughout your service time, those records are held at that facility and not centralized in a central database for you to go get later. So you got to collect those as you go and take that stuff with you. We have to own our own whole health. We can't expect our leaders to do it for us, because it's not their job, it's not their mission, right? Typically, you're not managing your people's medical records and health, so to speak, either. So we need to take a different approach to the whole health matter.
Leave it to the government to make things simpler, right?
Well,
Say that
so leave it. So
tongue-in-cheek.
yeah, again, back to the DoD tap, right? With free, you get what you pay for.
How about that? So going back to this, one of the other things you remind me, I do merger and acquisition work for businesses, and oftentimes represent the seller of a business, another life transition event, right? They're gonna sell their company, they're gonna get the wealth out of the business and turn it into cash, hopefully. But 2 out of 3 times I find that rather than choosing the timing chooses them. How does that play in the military? You talked about, obviously, somebody having a death, right? But other things happen in the military. Do you have a sense for how often people kind of get to pick their retirement versus when their exit picks them in the military?
So I had a discussion with a junior officer a few months back, and he mentioned that because he had been in the bubble of some brass where he had seen them come and go over a couple of years. And he said, Jarrod, I don't think anybody leaves happy, because they always were bucking to make that next rank, at that level anyways. They stay 05 and above, maybe. And not only that, during my time as a transition assistance program officer, which again, that experience kind of prompted me to ask that question and do something different. I saw 10 officers transition out, 5 JOs that had failed to select for their promotion to 04, and then 5 senior officers. And one of the 10 had seemed to intentionally, informatively planned their post-service activities.
So I
think I agree with
sort of
that.
being ushered out, huh?
Right. We're let go when we're not expecting it. And, if we start from the earliest days in our training pipeline, having our military family, whether or not that's us as a single person or with a family of 10, but being, fully ready for that inevitable last day on active duty, and be preparing, planning, and working up for the biggest mission of our lives, which is that transition period. I believe the transition mission itself starts at the 48-month point ahead of getting out. With vast majority of folks staying in 5 to 7 years, you can't wait until much past the training pipelines to start intentionally and formatively
Is
planning.
that the statistically where most people get out of the military is 5 to 7 years? I mean, what is
So
it? What are the numbers?
I don't have the exact numbers on that. That's a lookup that I need to do for the book that I'm currently writing. But that's my understanding, is typically the majority of service members leave the services at 5 to 7 or 8 years. And then, a minority of us stick around past that. But the point is, what's common between us all is an eventual transition off active duty.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got to be ready for it.
And we need to be ready for it, as does our family.
Let me take you back. Let's go back and drill back into your personal past. I like the Southern drawl you got in your voice there. It comes out every now and then. Tell
Sure.
everybody how you came to join the Navy.
Oh, well, like most of my colleagues, I would think it was 9/11. That and then finishing school, they offered a pretty great deal at the time that allowed me to come on to active duty and then enlisted ranks.
Where'd you grow up? Tell everybody where you grew up and where you
Oh,
went to
okay.
school.
I came
Yeah.
up in a little town of Farmersville, Texas, in Northeast Texas. Our Army friends out there may know of a World War II hero named Audie Murphy.
Oh yeah.
He's
Is he from your hometown?
from that area. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So I grew up there. Spent the hot Texas summers uh, doing some farming with my dad and granddad, and then building stick homes with my uncle. So I was glad to leave a lot of that behind me because it is hot and humid in Texas that time of year. So yeah, uh, I played football, played some baseball, ran some track. Uh, yeah, that's about it. Pretty simple.
Went to
Pretty simple
Texas
life.
A&M.
I did. I went to Texas A&M, got a Bachelor of Science in Geology from Texas A&M, and then headed off to Officer Candidate School in Pensacola, Florida,
Yeah.
2003 timeframe. So,
And by going to Pensacola, were you thinking you were on an aviation track? I don't understand how is that for aviation or is that for just a general OCS at Pensacola at the time?
at the time, Naval Officer Candidate School was in Pensacola. It has since relocated up to Newport, Rhode Island, I believe it is. So I got lucky and headed there in November.
My knowledge of Pensacola, by the way, is predominantly about places like Floribama and McGuire's, but other than
Yeah.
that, which is a good reason to go to Pensacola, Florida. Trust me.
Right. Yeah, but reason I said I would go be a loggy in the Marine Corps is because at OCS we had a Marine Corps drill instructor, and the coin he gave us at the end of training was Navy owned but Marine Corps trained. So not only that, in preparation for my OCS time, I linked up with the Marine Corps ROTC unit at Texas A&M my last 6 months in college, and trained with them. Went on some rucks, puked a little bit, and tried to get into shape for OCS, and it helped out because I made it through.
Have you found a home in the Navy though? I mean, you didn't just do 5 years and get out. So
find a home. Well, as supply corps officers, we kind of get farmed out to all the different warfare areas. So I started out on submarine, love that tour. Did a forward deployed naval forces stint out of Guam on a fast attack boat out there. 30 months of that, fun times. I left there, came back to Virginia, and got in with the Navy Expeditionary Unit in Civil Affairs for a short stint. Wound up that command was closing down early, so I took a global support assignment to Afghanistan with U.S. Army. Off of that U.S. Army trip to the desert, I came back and got on George H.W. Bush out of Norfolk, went back to the Middle East on her first deployment. From there,
man,
I
you've
went
been
to Monterey.
Everywhere, man. It's like
yeah, so I haven't really had a home. No, so we got
but
to
that's
go
really good. It's given you a lot of variety in your Navy career.
Yeah. So carrier tour and then to Monterey, California for a postgraduate degree, MBA. And then I got to go to Pennsylvania, where I worked with NAVSUP again with repair parts and IT, logistics information technology systems that we use to equip the Navy with. And then I got to go back to submarine force, and my subpack tour as a senior lieutenant commander was a phenomenal experience. Ton of effort, and I got to collaborate with a bunch of different folks. Just love that tour. And it's all these experiences with all these different warfare communities. I mean, it all came back together with respect to the Liberty Accelerator Program and military family readiness, and doing this different and applying these readiness concepts to all these different warfare platforms I've worked on to the military family, and then leaning on these health, self, wealth ideas with respect to relationships is kind of how it all came together. So my entire career has led to me developing this in order to improve our military families' lives in service, and as importantly, far, far beyond.
Hey, we're talking with Jarrod H. Smith of the Liberty Accelerator Program. I got to ask you another question. Where'd your call sign come from? What was it? Heck yeah. Where'd that come from?
Hashtag heck yeah. So an aviator buddy of mine on the submarine force staff in Hawaii, we that staff has in a sorts had mobilized to respond to the missing submarine rescue operation for Argentina back in the fall of 2017. And I mean, like any good supply guy, I answered the call for support to help. My boss was out at the time, '06, and he was on travel in a way, like out on a boat somewhere around Hawaii. But I was reporting in his seat and did that for a couple of weeks through the Thanksgiving holiday stand down and all that stuff. And we were working 24/7 trying to move equipment and people from the west coast of the U.S. to the east coast of Argentina. So, anyways, out of all that, he gave me the call sign Hell Yeah, and I had to make it a little more family friendly for social media. So I just decided to say Heck Yeah. And now a lot of times I'll use the hashtag Heck Yeah out in
That's your
cyberspace.
answer to a lot of requests. Is that the way it comes out?
That's right. Heck yeah. That's right.
All right. Heck yeah. All right. We're gonna do this podcast. Hell yeah, we're gonna do this podcast. All right. Oh, I like that. All right. So let's do this. Let's give some advice to a person who's, let's say he's in the Army right now, and he's thinking in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years he's going to get out. He knows the TAP program exists out there, but if he comes across your bow, what's the advice you're going to give him at that stage in his career?
Bob, I'm extremely happy that you asked about me giving advice. I believe that's the biggest problem we all have in this transition discussion, is there's way too much advice being given before the right questions are asked. And going back to my earlier point about ask the right questions with carefully chosen words, that applies here too. So I'm very hesitant to give advice to anybody without first getting to know them and then asking them some questions about what it is they want to do, right? It starts with that. It starts with, hey, let's get to know one another, see if we like each other, and then, do we want to work with one another, paid or not paid? That's irrelevant, right? But I would urge that young officer or an enlisted man or woman thinking about getting out to stop in, say hi, let's have a conversation, right? And then out of that conversation, I'm going to be able to tailor some very specific questions as to who they want to be beyond the uniform. And then after that's answered, what they want to do with their lives beyond the uniform. So fair enough.
Yeah, that's good. You've given me a thought. I kind of want to give a challenge out there. One of the things I do with my interns, I get these college interns, and what gets measured gets done, right? So
Right.
I started measuring the number of connections that they had on LinkedIn every week. I would get them to report on that. I think commanders in the military ought to just ask their people, how many private sector connections have you got on your LinkedIn account? And if you just start asking, all of a sudden those people are going to start focusing on it. And then maybe they'll start, to dig that well before they get thirsty. I mean, what do you think about that kind of thing? What do you think what do you think commanders ought to be doing in the military to, along these lines that we're not doing now?
And see, and that's the rub, right? So I'm going to lean on an experience I had last fall when I was visiting the neurosurgery department at Walter Reed. And I was in civies and a Marine Corps colonel was in uniform. And I struck up a quick conversation with him. I was like, hey, sir, how you doing? How many years you got left? And I don't know what he answered something, not sure. And I was like, well, don't, it was like, do you think that we ought to be thinking about it earlier? And he's like, not really, like that's what DOD TAP is for, right? I was like, well, I don't know, sir. But what about taking care of our people? I mean, shouldn't we be making sure they're ready for that last day on active duty? And his answer was, it's not our mission. as in our little M mission, right?
Mhm.
Yet how, where's the blending between taking care of our people, both in service, but then also in preparation for far beyond. So there's this cultural challenge we've got with respect to little M mission readiness as opposed to big M mission readiness for life, far beyond uniform service, right? So me personally, absolutely. If I had to do it over again in all my divisions and departments that I was able to be put in charge of and lead over the last 15 years, I absolutely would have been asking those questions then, but I didn't know. And our culture and the extremely demanding staff and operational assignments force all of our attention into that little M mission readiness. And I think we would be well served and probably get much more from our people, as well as give a whole lot more to them and their military families if we were asking those questions, Bob. Uh, how
My
we bridge that gap
analogy,
in change the culture, I don't know, but that's the point. I don't think we can do it inside the service, inside the bureaucracy, inside the culture. That was my purpose for launching Liberty Accelerator Program, in
yeah,
order to provide an outlet to do that.
out in the private sector, Jarrod, there are two types of businesses. There's the ones that kind of use people and chew them up. There's other businesses that put an enormous amount of emphasis on training and preparing their people, fully understanding that the risk is those people will go somewhere else. But which business would you rather be in? Which one's, got the better culture, right?
Absolutely.
I've always felt like, and hey, what am I to talk about? I've always felt like there's a lot the civilian sector can learn from the military, but there's also a ton that the military can learn from the civilian sector, and more of this cross pollination is absolutely necessary. So here's the final question for the interview. What's the plan for the next 24 months for the Liberty Accelerator Program and you? What have you got on the docket? What are some things we're looking forward to? You mentioned writing a book. You're doing some other things too, right?
I am. So once the book is published, hopefully by Veterans Day this year, if not, definitely Memorial Day 2022, I'll launch a podcast. I'm also putting out content on YouTube on what I call Transition Insights Bulletin, with respect to things that I come across as I take my journey through the transition battle, is what it really is. I mean, it's a battle because there's all kinds of things to be covering down on. Additionally, we are starting a program called TAPS, because a lot of people confuse DoD TAP, Transition Assistance Program, and call that TAPS. It is not TAPS. It is DoD TAP. The Liberty Accelerator Program, however, does have TAPS, and TAPS is the Transition Acceleration Project Solutions, where we structure military family readiness planning year over year in annual project sprints between February and November. And we have checkpoints every federal holiday weekend, because most people on ashore staff assignments anyways in the military have 4-day weekends where they can carve out a couple of hours of that weekend and focus on their military family readiness planning. Right. So that's the idea behind the structure, because we're all used to structure. We can fall in on structure very easily in the culture that we're coming from. Right. And these TAPS projects exist over a 48 to 60 month time period. It's a 5-year planning horizon in order to get this right, from a health perspective and getting your medical records straight, from a wealth perspective and having financial literacy and money aptitude, and understanding the full spectrum of wealth topics, from life insurance to the stock market, bond market, and everything else. And then lastly, that identity piece, finding yourself beyond the rank, weapons platform, and service branch, and obviously establishing relationships. Right. So that's the big one, is really getting the TAPS going for what I call Liberty fighters, in order to get them and their military family ready for that inevitable last day on active duty. Along with that, we put out an OpRep series newsletter, 7 of them during that February, November timeframe over holiday weekend, where I'm giving you insights with respect to one of the topics we discussed today. And then it allows for the military family and their hero an activity, in that topic area, in order to keep them engaged, increase their knowledge, and prepare, plan, and work up to that battle for liberty that they are going to have to face at some point in the future.
So we'll put links to get in touch with Jarrod on the show notes here. Maybe everybody needs to sign up for that OPREP letter. Sounds like. Jarrod, thank you so much for stepping into the spotlight. Really appreciate you sharing all this stuff. And we're going to have to get you back on when the book is ready. Will you promise to come back and we'll give the little promo for the book?
Oh, that'd be fantastic, Bob. Thank you so much for having me. I sure do appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, we've been listening to Jarrod H. Smith. He's the founder of the Liberty Accelerator Program today, talking about that transition out of the military that's inevitable for all of us at one day in the future or happened in the past. Thank you again so much for stepping into the spotlight, Jarrod. I'm going to throw out an Army Bravo Zulu for that performance to you, and that's a wrap.
Thank you for listening to Spotlight by VeteranCrowd. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and uploads, please visit our website at VeteranCrowdNetwork.com. We'll see you next time.